Welcome to the Towers, a local political podcast from the Spokesman-Review. We are joined today by Marcus Ricelli, state senator from Legislative District 3, represents Central Spokane. I'm Jonathan Brunt, the government editor at the Spokesman.
I'm Mitch Roland. I'm the State House reporter for the Spokesman-Review.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, pleased to be here. Happy Friday.
Just for a little fun kickoff here, you have often done Bloomsday. We are approaching the 50th Bloomsday. Are you going to do it this year?
I have not signed up. I'm a soccer player. I play a lot of indoor and outdoor soccer and ref soccer. And my feet have been killing me a little bit. Wow. So running is not the mode of choice.
But you can walk it, right?
But I could walk it. That's right. Yeah. And I also was listening on a couple of days ago. I didn't realize how many people are doing the virtual Bloomsday too. So who knows? There's still some opportunities there. But it's such a great event for our community. So I guess there's still time to register.
I will let Mitchell ask first real question.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
You mentioned that you're a soccer fan. We talked a little bit yesterday about you coaching soccer in your rec league. The big announcement yesterday was that Spokane will play host to the Egyptian national team during the upcoming World Cup. Spokane was previously selected as an official fan zone, and we're kind of getting these festivities kicked off. I was hoping you could kind of walk through some of the preparations that the state has made kind of in recent years to kind of give this Spokane this opportunity and kind of what this means for the city.
Yeah, well, I'm really pleased. Actually, I convened a group of folks, the CEO of the local organizing committee that was working to get have Seattle land the World Cup as a host city, asked to come visit with some of their team members, I think over 18 months ago. And we just convened a community conversation at Gonzaga just to talk about the prospects of what a World Cup means, give people information about the economic development opportunities. And we followed up that with a happy hour with a bunch of soccer enthusiasts and leaders. And it was great. I think people were kind of looking at me a little bit side-eyed saying, like, what do you mean? Like, there's this opportunity potentially to be a base camp for a World Cup team? Sure, whatever. But we rallied folks and people really liked the idea. The other piece was just to be successful and do this right. I think people knew this couldn't just be a Seattle-only event. And so the idea of the fan zone was brought forward to us in Spokane. What could that mean to draw some attention? And then we had to look at some of the infrastructure, whether it be security, looking at Lumen Field and investing in capital there to make it ready, and some of the other base camp sites around. And so we did capital investing. And then finally, transportation planning, dollars for Seattle, but also for fan zones with transportation. And so excited about all that, but it did take a lot of discussions with the legislature and some planning and prep work.
How much money statewide coming into the Spokane area for this?
Just as far as like public investment? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did $100,000 to Gonzaga that they're matching for the stadium and the practice fields. Hopefully people will see the kind of long-term investment in that facility. If you look at the transportation piece, I'm not exactly sure how much of the money we got through STA as a fan zone and planning. And then there's some dollars that are associated. So it's not a ton of money really when it comes down to it. If you look at some of the dollars that are being spread, I did get some of the numbers, some of the other sites. Seattle U got $1 million, UW got $4.4 million. Lumen, we're investing $30 million into Lumen just to bring it up to speed. But we're hoping the payoff is going to be great for the whole state, not just the Seattle area.
All right. Let's talk the session.
Sure.
Pretty big session for it being a short session. And we have, of course, the income tax.
Mm-hmm.
You had not always been so into the income tax. So explain kind of the change in your position from a couple years ago to this year.
Yeah, I think the structure of it, the approach where it's the first dollar after $1 million, just being presented with the people I represent. We represent around 160,000 people. The analysis said that's probably about 211 people that would be impacted. I think before redistricting, the district I represent would have been even less. We moved farther South Hill, and just balancing the needs in our community and putting us on a more sustainable structure. I did talk with business quite a bit, both locally and statewide. They're tired of the unpredictableness that we have coming into these sessions. And, we want to put us on a more sustainable track, and our upside down tax code has really been impacting us. I've seen that. I've seen how it's impacted what we're able to do. And so for me, it was compelling to move forward with the millionaire's tax.
I think some previous proposals, some that go back 20 years, like Ron Sims' proposal for income tax many years ago was create an income tax, and use all that money for tax breaks, and to cut other kinds of taxes. That's not this way that this legislature did it. Talk about the final outcome. There is some tax cuts. There's also some revenue increases.
Yeah, significantly, I think, and I think we have to do a better job as legislators, explain the community as it comes forward. There's a significant number of dollars for small business relief, B&O tax relief. I go back to Dan Evans' proposal, and I think that kind of strategy, if we were able to do that, would make sense. Pass an income tax and completely remove B&O tax simultaneously, and that was a Republican governor that brought that forward. Came up short. So for me, providing that kind of relief, but also looking at where people are getting hit hard on affordability. So sales tax relief for hygiene products, et cetera, was part of it. And then for me, I've spent a decent amount of time. I've passed 3 bills to try and bring universal meals forward for kids at schools. I think food is health. And with the bills I've passed, we've gone from about 250,000 to 750,000 of our students receiving universal meals. Every kid in Spokane Public Schools gets free universal meals. That's not good enough for me. I think every kid in our state should get that. And so working with the governor's office, I brought the proposal last year to do universal meals. This was brought forward as part of the package, something that we could do that I think is not just the right thing to do, but there's a lot of people struggling with affordability, and this is a tax break basically for them. And then also for those parents out there every day getting the kids out the door, ensuring that your kids have food. Now, I think we should move forward with the universal meals, but I think we should also, after that, make them healthier. We should make them grown sustainably locally. So I think there's a lot more on that front, but I think getting kids sustenance first is a huge thing as part of this package. So I will tell you now, there was opposition even in my own party, just because they wanted to look at funding other things. But I think the governor put a stake down on this one, and I was pleased to continue to lead on that.
One of the concerns I've heard from people is that, just given our proximity to Idaho, is that people with the means to move over the border will eventually just kind of move and take their tax dollars with them. Senator Shessler and Senator Short have raised this point. I talked with a real estate agent in Coeur d'Alene who said that he's seen an influx in people moving across to Idaho. Is that something you're concerned about? Concerned about just this idea of capital flight, of people moving to Idaho for cheaper gas, for cheaper way of life, and then just a reduction in taxes? So
I just kind of reject the fact that what this millionaire's tax that is on the first dollar of $1 million that impacts around 22,000 people in our state. All these folks who maybe aren't impacted are going to then jump the line and go to a place that has an income tax. I think our quality of life is good. I think our schools are better, and I think from my standpoint, if the data plays out, but kind of the anecdotal, if I'm a real estate agent in Coeur d'Alene, I'm going to be talking about all the people come see me too. Let's see how this proves out. I do think we need to do a better job about communicating some of the small business relief with the B&O tax in this package, and we're working on kind of documents and things that we can do with small business owners to ensure they know why we want to keep them here. And I think it's important. We are a border community, and I am very sensitive to that. And if those trends are proving out, I want to know about them. I think, one, this is clearly going to go to the courts and clearly be ballot tested. So I don't see that. Let's see what the numbers have going forward.
You say you want to communicate better the business relief.
Yeah.
Why don't you? Here's an opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think we need to. I think some of it is so individual in a situation between what dollars have I raised, what's my personal income, what's my business income, et cetera, that we're going to have to really work, and we're going to have to work with the agencies to talk to people and provide portals and things for them to work at, to say like, and worksheets and able to go so they can really see what their overall tax burden is. So to me, I just want to make sure we have the consumer tools so that they can actually see before they, I think.
But can you give me an example of a
like
B&O, a small business, what they might not have to pay now as a result of this change?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the liability. So if you're a small a business, and you're like a restaurant owner, let's say, and you're crunching your numbers, and you look at some of the relief that was provided. I can't dial it up right now for you, but like if you look at the different offsets, I just think that's going to pan out that for a lot of folks that think they're going to be paying a higher tax burden, they won't. But it's hard. I have to get myself with the worksheet itself. So I don't think I could walk you through a scenario. But the ones that I've been walked through with staff and with some of the proponents of the bill, it just seemed like a lot of people that think they are going to be paying a tax, the offsets that we incur. So I think that's part of me getting even more up to school so I can sit down with local business owners who will probably email us or call us and say, what are you guys doing? And then I'm going to be able to go hopefully and sit down with them and say, like, here's your scenario. Show me how you think your tax burden is higher with some of the B&O tax offsets we put forward.
What Republicans are concerned that the threshold will lower in the future. Would you commit to never going below $1 million?
Well, here's what I think. I think inflation will naturally push some folks up. If we're talking about never having a full tax structure conversation, I wouldn't commit to that, because I'm one of those people who said if you were telling me right now we could eliminate the B&O tax and in favor put in straight income tax, and that, I think the concerns I hear is folks believe the income tax will always exist and the B&O taxes will exist. So I'm open to that conversation if that relief comes forward. So committing to that to me doesn't make sense at this point.
One of the other big bills that passed this session was a new set of standards for county sheriffs or elected county sheriffs in the state. They have to, I believe it's 5 years of experience. They have to have certification from Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, among other requirements. That prompted a lawsuit from, I believe, from several county sheriffs, including the Spokane county sheriffs. That's a bill that you supported. I was hoping you kind of expand on your support.
Yeah, I think some of the basic standards that are being required for law enforcement in that bill makes sense to me. I think the contentious point, and I even had conversations with Sheriff Knowles, while he wasn't like thrilled about it. I think if you took away the piece that would, an elected officer could be removed, he might have gotten there with the other pieces, but that was a real sticking point for them. For me, like, there's other states that have done this, that have, these basic standards for law enforcement officers, and it just seemed like these qualifications make a lot of sense. I heard the argument that, are we passing a bill because of one kind of rogue sheriff on the west side? That definitely brought to attention like some of the concerns, but I don't think it's concerning to me to ensure that, like, if we're going to have the head of our law enforcement in the community, that they have basic standards for their for what they do.
Why not trust the voters, though? I mean, that would be the argument.
Well, that's an interesting question. I do trust the voters.
They can recall, or they can decide to vote for someone else at the next election. What's wrong with that process?
I think just having a basic set of standards is something that should be brought forward, and I think the voters will make good decisions, but that process could be long, and like, what's the harm that could be done if there's something so egregious in that time as the voters go through the process of recall? I mean, I don't know from start to end what that timeline is, but if somebody's done something egregious, like, I think we should get them out of office.
But the commission that would have that power aren't necessarily residents of this community, for instance, correct? They're part of the training commission. So you're taking a potential power from local voters and transferring it to statewide people who may not live here.
And, that's an interesting question. I think what you're transferring it to basically is letting people who have the acumen, the training background to understand what would happen in this, hopefully the unique situation where someone is acting egregiously, where, the public is potentially being endangered because of someone who's recklessly abusing their office. So I get the pushback. I think, those folks are experts and making the decision if it got to this process. And look, we all hope it doesn't get to this process, but we have to have something in place. And I think we've seen what's happened when there's not something in place on the west side, and that was, concerning with Sheriff Swank. And
one of the other bills that passed this year was an exemption or extended period of time for the waste to energy plant to kind of meet CCA standards. That's something that's been discussed in the legislature in the recent years. You were the sponsor of the companion bill in the Senate. Why was this the right approach to take for that facility?
Yeah, and I drafted the substitute that was kind of the compromise at the end, and we're, well, first, our local environmentalists weighed in heavily, which I really appreciated. And they understood we needed an on-ramp to compliance, not just a strict cutting of where we're at. And, I think it would have cost our ratepayers significantly. We have this unique publicly funded waste to energy plant that was in threat of coming offline. We were going to truck waste to poorer parts of the state, creating carbon as they're putting in trucks, etc. So I just thought now was the right time to try and attack it. I did call it kind of a unicorn because there's nothing else that exists like this. It is from the 90s. They have done a lot of improvements. I've seen some stuff that's been done on waste to energy and some of the advancements. So I don't think anybody came to the table thinking this is our forever solution. But the idea that we were going to just take it offline, people were going to lose jobs, ratepayers were going to pay more when we're already in affordable crunch didn't seem acceptable to me. And the stakeholdering locally, and trust me, it was a fight. I'm pleased that the message of our local environmentalists who wanted to work on something outweighed kind of a statewide environmental coalition that initially was and ecology, and had lots of discussions with the governor's office that were pushing back significantly until we kind of found what I think is a sweet spot, which is this on-ramp to compliance.
Do you think, I know there's different opinions about the best carbon solution, trash, incineration, or landfilling. Do you have a position on long-term? Do you think Spokane should find a way to continue with some type of incineration, or do you think it's better to just landfill it?
Some of the advances in technology around incineration, I think they could absolutely be, and personally should be, part of the equation. I actually got to visit a waste to energy plant in Copenhagen, where they built recreation on it. They had a climbing wall and did all these things. It was 5 years old, and I think that stuff came with significant extra cost. But 5 years old, and they're making that part of their solution. I think we're moving in that direction where we can do it in a clean way. I think it's but I think all of our solution around energy is going to be multi-pronged approach, whether that be biogas, whether that be hydrogen, whether it be geothermal heating and cooling. We're going to run out of resources, and fossil fuels is not the answer, the final answer. It's all of the above.
Since we're talking about environmental issue, I'm just curious. There was a lot of talk this session on the plastic bag situation.
This is where
This is where you what?
Well, I took a significant different position than most people in my party.
Really? What was your position?
Senator Braun, the Republican leader, introduced a bill to step back and the plastic bag ban and do some research. I signed on to that bill. I'm very frustrated that we brought forward the plastic bag ban. I think the intent was good. It's actually creating more waste. So I think we need to step back and evaluate policies when they don't do what they should do. Do I think we need to remove plastic? Yes. Do I think that we created these stronger bags that people expected to be reused over and over that aren't being reused, and now we've created more waste is a problem? Yes. And it's been fascinating to me, going up to, I remember talking to frontline worker at a labor rally, talking about their frustration about the plastic bags. And I get it. I think we can come up with smarter solutions, and we don't get it right. We should. So I signed on to that bill. It didn't move forward to kind of step back, but then the plastic bag ban that went further this year also didn't move forward. So I think we need to put more investigation into that, and I'm frustrated.
Do you have any ideas for how to phase down the amount of plastic in grocery bags? If not that way?
Well, I think we should be looking at paper where it makes sense. I think, probably comes into some issues with like restaurants, et cetera. But in the stores, I do think we could move to paper. I do think it has to make sense. But yeah, the idea that we made thicker bags and they created more waste is just, look, we got to say sometimes when we get it wrong. I think the intentions were great.
One of the bills that you sponsored that did make it through this year was to restrict counties from sharing voter data with the federal government. The Trump administration has been seeking data from the state of Washington for about a year now, I believe. They filed a lawsuit against Secretary of State Steve Hobbs. That's still progressing. I believe your legislation restricts individual counties from sharing that data. Can you just explain why you think it's important to kind of protect that data and restrict its sharing it with federal government?
Yeah, it's not a restriction. They go through the Secretary of State's office. I think having a central point for that data, this is very personal information. This is social security numbers, driver license numbers, birth date information. Having that being coordinated and going through the Secretary of State's office makes sense. That's why we had both a Republican Secretary of State and a Democratic Secretary of State testifying in front of the bill in committee. I don't care who's in the White House. It just makes sense that, folks shouldn't have to, be able to willy-nilly go pick off a county and have a politically supportive county auditor just hand over data. That's really concerning to me. So I think it was the right legislation. I think the fact that the federal government is doing this and doing it ahead of midterms, we should all be taking a look. I think our democracy is at risk. And again, the federal government can get this data. They just have to go through the Secretary of State's office. They shouldn't be going county by county and finding political allies to try and wreak havoc on our democratic process.
What do you foresee in the next session?
I think we're probably headed into another budget crunch. I'm really concerned overall for the state. I work a lot in healthcare issues. I'm concerned for our community about HR 1 that, I think we'll potentially be dealing with a lot of people losing.
HR 1.
Sorry, that's the bill that I will not name is named. It's the bill that some call I call it the ugly bill. Yes.
The big, beautiful
yeah.
bill.
Thank you. I'm not gonna. Okay. I can't use those words because all it's doing is it's gonna kick a bunch of people off healthcare and they're gonna end up in our emergency room or worse and cause us all extra costs as we don't go upstream and take care of people.
What kind of costs does the state now potentially have to take over if they wanted to maintain services?
Oh, geez.
How much are we talking?
I mean, the Medicaid dollars that we get are in the billions, and we're going to do our best around the work requirements to help folks navigate them, because what we've seen in other states that went with their own work requirement already they went live with work requirements. It wasn't that a lot of those people weren't eligible. It was that there was bureaucratic hoops that they were not able to jump through. Okay, you have to prove to said employer that you were working from this time. Okay, this employer went out of business, they're not being responsive. Number of these other things. So we're putting a bunch of hoops in front of people who need access to healthcare. Healthcare is a human right. And honestly, it just doesn't make sense too, because if people don't get that healthcare access, they're going to get sicker. A lot of them are going to end up in the emergency room. Everybody's premiums are going to raise. So I think we're, the best we can to backfill those types of things. You look at other things like SNAP, federal food cuts, and all those are things that hit people in Spokane directly and hugely. So we're going to be looking at ways that we can bolster those things, but we're facing it on a lot of fronts. And I feel like affordability is a big concern, and Washingtonians and American people are under attack from this federal government that are trying to hit them at the pocketbooks hard when they're struggling.
Do you expect to be looking for new revenue, or potentially having to cut some of these benefits that Washington has offered?
That's a good question. It's always a balance. I do think, we've gone from last year a number of revenue measures. This year, obviously, we're going to see as the process begins, if things will be held up in the courts as things go forward with the ballot measure. So I think it depends on the size of the crisis, but I think it will be hard to get people to reach another step on revenue. I think that we've really pushed it. I think people are being hit hard, and I wouldn't take anything off the table, but I think we're going to have to probably do a mix. But broadly, if we are pushed, we'll have to make cuts, and those are painful. Something like 80 or 85% of what we have in our budget is mandatory funding that's connected with federal government spending, et cetera. So there's not a lot of discretionary spending. That's usually for a lot of our most vulnerable people, and that's what's on the chopping block. And for me, there's a lot of people that are struggling in Spokane, and we don't want to see us go backwards on some of the services that help families thrive.
Governor Ferguson last year, when he took office, the state was facing a deficit somewhere in the range of $16 billion. And one of the things he said is that ideally he'd want to see the state kind of move away from having such kind of peaks and valleys in revenue and kind of move to a more sustainable budget model, so there's not those multi-billion-dollar deficits that the state's facing every year. Is there a way you think the legislature could approach the state budget so it's kind of a little more even, instead of kind of entering session needing to look for either multi-billion dollars in cuts or just additional revenue?
I think there is a way. I think it requires a stable federal government, and we're not there. I think there is a path. If we have more certainty coming out of DC, that we can navigate that. I think at this point, navigating that is going to be extremely challenging because we're getting hit multiple ways on important streams of cash, and I think that'll be challenging.
Talk a little more basic politics.
Yeah.
As a member of the Democratic Party, the Spokane Democratic Party has been a little rocky lately. Different leadership shakeups. How do you feel about your party going into this midterm election locally?
I'm super pleased that Paul Dillon stepped up. I think we needed to put things back on track. I think he's doing that. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement out there for a pushback to the federal administration and how that trickles down to a lot of really important elections. So I think it was challenging. We had a lot of local party turmoil, but I think Paul has started to right the ship and making sure that people have an open door where they can walk in, they can get active, engaged, they can get excited about candidates, they can learn how they can help push values forward of the Democratic Party, affordable, accessible health care, making sure everybody can thrive. We can get people jobs where they can be successful, those types of things. And I think Paul has put it on the track, and I look forward to seeing us coalescing. I think if we can't coalesce in this current environment with so many threats to just core values, and that's not just Democrat core values, but just core values of Americans that are just under attack consistently, then we have real problems. So I think Paul's rallying folks, and I look forward to being part of that. But our message is much broader than just Democratic PCOs and elected officials. It's the general public that's getting hit at the pocketbooks right now around affordability, that are struggling to pay for groceries and housing costs, et cetera. And I think those people are looking out for solutions. They also just want decency back. There's got to be a swing and a pushback. Our core. I talk a lot about civics with folks and engagement in the process. And, I'm raising younger kids, and it's shameful what's going on coming out of DC right now. And I think people are awakening to the fact that we're at a potential tipping point for our democracy, and they're ready to engage. And
other political issue, your district, Tim Ormsby, of course, retiring after a couple of decades. There is a race for that seat. Dr. Kohlmeyer and Luke Jasmine, are you endorsing the candidate?
I haven't endorsed anybody yet. Here's what I say. I look forward to serving with a Democrat from the 3rd Legislative District. I think both folks I've connected with quite a bit. I actually co-taught public health with Dr. Kohlmeyer at Eastern Washington University. I've worked for a long time with Luke Jasmine in his capacity working for the governor, and also his early workings and connections with the legislature as an advocate for childcare and the businesses he ran. So I think we have a couple of really great choices, and I'll be continuing to chat with them both a lot and provide as many resources about what the job is. And
will you make an endorsement before the primary?
I'm thinking of it. Yeah, I'm planning to endorse prior to the primary, but not ready to announce anything at this point.
Well, we've lost for this district and the Spokane delegation. We've had a lot of people in power. Mark Schessler on the Republican side had a lot of power at one point. You had Andy Billig, your predecessor, Lisa Brown. A lot of those folks have now gone. You're now this kind of one of the senior folks. Does Spokane have any danger of losing power in the legislature without having Tim leading the appropriations committee?
Yeah, no, I think that is a position of significant influence and power. So we got to double down and make sure that we're working together. I will say it's also a big loss. I work really well with both Mike Volz and Suzanne Schmidt. As a region, we try and come together. But I think it's a big loss. There's no way other to say that. You have the chair of appropriations, the chief budget writer for the House, and we're going to have to work doubly hard. I will say it was a big honor for me to roll in. I planned to put my head down as a senator and roll in and be elected to leadership and be the Senate Majority Floor Leader. That puts me in a leadership position for the Senate Democrats, which for me is good for Spokane. And I'd love to see folks on both sides of the aisle, and including some of these newer electeds, moving into leadership roles because it's good for our region and our community. But yeah, there's no way around to say that, we lost, Andy as Senate Majority Leader when he moved on, and now Tim as the Chair of Appropriations. So those are important positions.
Going back to the legislature, one of the facilities in Spokane that you really have pushed for in recent years is Maddie's Place. I believe they secured $2 million in the capital budget that was passed. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was actually operating dollars through the opioid use settlement dollars.
But is there a way that you could foresee just kind of a more stable funding model for them as well?
Yeah, so I introduced a bill. I'm super frustrated. I'm happy to talk about this. I feel like everybody knows the good work that they're doing. I introduced a bill to try and get them funded through Medicaid. Going back to Kathy McMorris Rogers, she introduced a bill at the federal level. If that passed, that would take care of a lot of these issues. Other states have moved in this direction, but they need a sustainable model. So I put $5 million in the previous biennium. That was for operating expenditures and a study from the WSU, because people, including the healthcare authority, was like, is this model working? It's like, well, let's test it. And I told the folks at Maddie's Place, if the research comes back and says it's not working, then we shouldn't be putting money into it. Well, it's working. We put capital budget dollars, and it's really successful model working with some of our, unfortunately, substance exposed neonatal babies, but they're getting an opportunity to be in this environment, to be taken care of. A lot of them have mothers that are willing to get into treatment, and the model is working. And I think there should be a sustainable model. So I'd like to pass the bill that I authored. Kind of the deal that I managed with our chair of Ways and Means is that the bill would go away this year if we could ensure another year of sustainable funding. But it's not a great model for Maddie's place, and I don't think it's a great model to continue to have to go back every year and get, or every biennium and get $2 or $4 million so that they can maintain operations. I think the work they're doing is incredible, and it should be funded through Medicaid.
So maybe one more question
Sure.
for you. I don't.
Go ahead.
Last fall, the city council here boosted kind of their enforcement of camping laws and other things. I think the business community's been pretty happy, and it hasn't led to maybe as many problems as other people thought it might cause. What's your take on that? I know the legislature took up some related things, and what was your position on the related bills in the Senate?
Yeah, the bills to roll that back I was opposed to. That puts me at odds with some of my colleagues who I think come from a good spot. I think the direction the city council took was a good one, and support it. And I do think we've seen results here, and people don't only have to be safe; they have to feel safe. I want to see a more vibrant downtown. I want to see people. I want to see our streets activated. I want to see people, more people living down here. That's a big problem too. That's something that I'm working on, and something that I came short of this session, working on an incentive to expand our pavement to people bill to underutilized property. I just met with the city and some stakeholders today to do that. I want to see more access to grocery stores down here, people living, more of that kind of middle housing. And I think public safety is a piece of that. We want people to feel safe. Now, I don't think the problem I have is sometimes the narrative is everything's just awful. And walking down the street here on a Friday, there's a lot of good things we got going on. And then when things do go well, it's almost hard for some folks to even celebrate. And I think that that's the wrong narrative for this community. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I actually just don't think it's accurate. I think we have a lot of challenges. We should address them, but we should also be able to come together. It's almost like pulling teeth sometimes for some of the folks who have been beating the drum to be like, oh yeah, things might be getting a little better. Like they can barely even say that. And that's not a solution to get more people downtown and get folks from outside this community to come down here and participate in commerce and spend money at our restaurants and see shows and have a good time.
Just as we wrap up here, North-South Freeway, are we still on track for 2030?
Everything that I've been told is we are on track. I would say the big concern at this point is not the funding, it's whether or not we have the labor force to figure it out. I think and then the other piece is just tariffs, et cetera. If that starts raising prices in a way that isn't fitting in, I'm hoping that WashDOT will be extremely clear, because their expectation is 2030 right now. And it's time to deliver on the project that started before I was born.
And you're cool with the current design, current connections to I-90?
I mean, there's, like the design build still in play for some of the stuff when they connect to 90. So there's still changes to happen. But yeah, I'm good with the direction they're headed. And one of the things I have been trying to push for and I'd like to see is the city's concerned if we opened up Trent that they wouldn't be able to take the traffic. I actually think giving people another drivable segment before completion would be a really great thing. I think we should.
There's a debate of completing it to Trent, not quite to 90, but not opening Trent.
Well, they would just bypass. So like there isn't. It's my understanding that the on ramp for Trent doesn't go till completion, and I think that's a miss. I think one of the things for me as an elected official, show taxpayers where their dollars are going. It is getting used, the segments that have been open. Why not open, even if it's just to reduce some of the traffic, jumping on going north, maybe something like that. So I'm kind of a squeaky wheel with WashDOT. I'm gonna keep pushing. But you saw what happened when Governor Inslee zeroed out the North Spokane freeway a couple years ago. You saw something that doesn't typically happen. Andy and Tim and I came out very vehemently opposed to that, and then we had a regional pushback and made sure that our voices heard. And that's our first obligation, is make sure people are feeling represented, not to the party or which governor's in office. It's to the people here in Spokane. So hopefully that was seen as us making sure that we're not going backwards on that.
Is there an issue you'd like to bring up?
I think we talked about meals. I think really for me one of the key capital budget investments, we worked with the county and the city on the Pathways to Wellness building. That's going to be the 23-hour crisis facility. We got over the last couple years a little over $3 million for that. The feds have come in and matched that. I just think that a no wrong door place for people who are in behavioral health crisis or substance use disorder, and not the hospital, is a great opportunity for
When's
folks.
that gonna be ready?
The opening, it's pretty fast. I think we're looking at a 12-month timeline, but we'll have to talk with the county. Part of it too is just making sure you can have the capital facility, but making sure they're staffed up properly. So I think that's a good thing moving forward. And then, it's a big honor to represent this community. I appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit about last session. It was probably the longest short session of my career, but it's a huge honor to continue to work for the community and try and deliver on key priorities. And
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, guys.